Resident Evil is a series I've been a fan of for quite a while now, and with Resident Evil Requiem coming next year, I found myself returning to the previous titles I owned for the first time in a while, to not only refamiliarize myself with the story and characters that could show up during this next installment, but to relive those moments of horror that well and truly stand out to me. Which brings me to the topic of today's video, Resident Evil 4. Which on the surface isn't really a horror game, instead opting to be a more action heavy game in comparison to games such as RE2 or 7, which I was hot off the heels of playing as I started this playthrough. And while I do have fond memories of RE4's story and gameplay, when I started I couldn't quite pinpoint a part of the game that I was really excited to re-experience, let alone a moment that stood out to me in a horror sense. That was until I reached an area I had almost forgotten about. One so haunting and unsettling that inspired me to make this video just to encapsulate how much it scared me. The area in question is near the very end of the game in the laboratory, and more specifically, what roams within the halls. So without any further ado, let's jump into it, shall we? First off, I wanted to provide a bit of context for the story of RE4 for those who need a reminder or aren't really familiar with it. In RE4, we play as Leon S. Kennedy, years after the events of Raccoon City in RE2, tasked with retrieving the president's daughter who was kidnapped by a religious group in rural Spain. However, very quickly, we find the villagers are infected with the Las Plagas parasite, which has turned them into violent, mindless killers. And with the help of a few unlikely allies, Leon and Ashley make their way through most of the island. Until Ashley is captured for like the 20th time in the last hour, and Leon has to go chase her down once more. And after fighting through a couple of guards, we find ourselves walking into the lab, where everything is suddenly quiet. Too quiet. To the point where you begin to notice Leon's breathing, every footstep you take, and every small creak of the building. Then you enter the darkness, and your ears are filled with the sounds of jagged, labored breathing, with the music immediately growing tenser, triggering your fight or flight response as you tense up, ready to face whatever comes your way. Looking to the left side, there's really nothing of note, just a few locked doors and what looks to be x-rays hang on the wall. But as you turn back around and go to the right, you see something massive and unfamiliar dash past before your brain can even process what it was. And against our better judgment, we follow it only to find that whatever it was has vanished. But we know it's still here, as the sounds of its breathing fills the entire room. And very quickly we begin to understand what we're up against, as we reroute the power and enter the dissection room, where we get our first look at what's been roaming just out of sight, with the aforementioned x-rays showing a deformed human body with growths and teeth literally ripping their way out of the subject's head. And we find notes lying around to describe exactly what this thing is. Subject analysis, regenerator. Date, April 9th. At last, I have created new life. I call it regenerator. Its metabolic capacity is incredible. Unless all of the parasites residing within the organism are destroyed, its tissue can regenerate indefinitely. Date, April 10th. Upon examining the body with a biosensor scope, I was able to confirm that the parasites behave like vital organs for the host, almost as though it has multiple hearts. This new creation of mine is essentially immortal. Surely even Dr. Frankenstein himself will want to shake my hand in admiration. Date, April 13th. I shared the news of my achievement with that pretentious bastard colleague of mine. His face went white, then he started scribbling something in his notebook. I thought he'd be impressed, but instead he actually had the nerve to warn me of the so-called dangers. He's a fool. I have everything under control. The subject went wild and escaped from his cryogenic tank. I was the real fool. Putting the notes down, we turn back expecting to see whatever was just described barreling towards us. But instead, no one's there. The game does such a good job at leading you into a false sense of security, where you think you can handle whatever's coming at you, so you can predict exactly what's going to happen. But it also creates a tension where you're constantly looking over your shoulder, moving slowly and so unsure of what's roaming around you and what sounds to be directly above you. And just as you think you know what's going on, what's going to happen, you pick up the keycard and turn to see a silhouette suddenly waiting outside the doorway before it barges its way inside. Throughout my time playing Resident Evil, there haven't been many enemies that I can actually say unnerved me. Off the top of my head, there's the baby in House Beneviento, Marguerite Baker, and the Lickers, but regenerators may be one of the most haunting things I've ever encountered. Your first instinct as the game has taught you is to fire shot after shot into its body, but every bullet only serves to stun it for little than a half a second. As fragile and limp as these creatures appear, they are fast, ruthless, and cunning, speeding up to a certain point only to slowly shamble forward towards you like a predator playing with its food. They lunge at you and grab you with their arms stretching across the room and their hands wrapping entirely around Leon's head as they unhinge their jaw going for the kill. It's unlike anything you faced up until this point. They heal from nearly everything you throw at them, their piercing orange eyes acting as a reminder in the dark that they are always constantly, slowly hunting you, no matter where you go. It's one thing for a survival horror game to provide you with an immense arsenal to take down any threat you may come across, but it's another to completely strip away the usefulness of those defenses. We've seen it kinda done in Resident Evil 8 where it takes your weapons away, but RE4 lets the player keep every piece of equipment they've acquired throughout the entire game, even providing a shop right outside the lab, and still it makes you feel completely useless in the span of minutes. You're left panicked and confused as to why this thing doesn't even stagger. Its head explodes and it still takes a swing. Its legs come clean off and it lunges towards the player, pinning them under its own body weight. And when you eventually pull yourself together enough to escape the regenerator, you'll find yourself once again in deafening silence as you enter the freezer to upgrade your keycard again. The room itself is packed to the brim with body bags, some of which seemingly being ripped out from the bottom, like whatever was inside clawed its way out. And as you begin the process of upgrading your keycard, another regenerator wriggles its way out of the body bag, and this time there's nowhere to run. You're forced into this tiny space, unable to do anything but wait and put every last bullet you have into the creature. And it's terrifying not only to be forced to wait it out, but to have this slow realization that every single body bag in this room could have a regenerator inside of it, and that once that keycard upgrades, you will be pursued by two unkillable machines at once, and possibly even more if the rest of these things decide to wake up. And after escaping the two roaming regenerators and running through hordes of normal enemies, we reach the final segment of the lab, realizing very quickly that our resources have begun to dwindle due to the regenerators, only made worse by what's in store for us in the next room. This moment is so simple in execution, but so effective in making the player realize how screwed we actually are. There's just that moment of silence I had looking around the room, prepping myself, thinking back on how I barely escaped 2 of these things, let alone 4 at once. And while the game does very quickly provide the answer to this question in the form of the bioscope, this only proves as a method of defense, with the game forcing us to confront the regenerator for the first time as we adjust to hitting the exact points we need to even have a chance at survival, fumbling our shots and adjusting to the regenerator's movements, trying to hit very specific points to put them down for good. and when their body finally gives out, they still try and persist, with their legs still shuffling forward in a last-ditch effort, only to fall and explode. And with wrench in hand, we upgrade our keycard one last time and fight a few more enemies, till we're home free. And while there are more segments afterward featuring regenerators and their upgraded counterparts, I don't think anything afterwards comes close to the fear this first segment instilled in me. The breathing, their movements, and its ability to deform its body and wrap its hands fully around Leon S. Kennedy, a 5'10" man's head, is so unnerving and terrifying to me. It's one of the only moments in the entirety of RE4 that reminded me that I am playing a horror game. And while there are plenty of other moments from the franchise that terrify me to no end, like the basement in RE7, none of them have made me fall in love with a game as quickly as the regenerators did. As mentioned, I began to view RE4 pretty much at the halfway point as a very action-heavy game. Which it is, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I actually loved it in comparison to the other games. But this one 20-minute segment filled me with more fear than the rest of the game combined. It's the only time where Leon is truly defenseless, and while we did have a section prior with Ashley and the Knights, I did feel like it never fully lived up to its potential to truly cement itself as a standout moment against the regenerators. Regenerators are enemies that only work when there's no way to fight back against them, and you're forced into these tight, dark corridors, leaving you to scramble around and try and survive. The second the bioscope was introduced, they lost a lot of that fear factor to me, which, while understandable from a gameplay standpoint, it did disappoint me a little, as I remembered these things being unstoppable machines. And for a while, that was true, but the bioscope quickly turned them from overwhelming to manageable. RE4 as a whole is a fantastic game, but when it comes to horror, I only really had this one moment where I was truly terrified. And I hope you can see why I love this small little slice of RE4 that juxtaposes everything we've been led to expect from this game. And from what I've seen of RE9 so far in that one hospital segment, I have a feeling that game's gonna live up to all of my expectations. But until then, I've been Core, and I'll see you in whatever I make next. Bye bye!